Hi everyone, thank you very much for stopping by and returning to the old world. Today, let's ask the question that seems to be at the forefront of people's minds following the London Grand Tournament. Does Warhammer the Old World need a balanced datasheet? Now, one of the things that I've been pretty positive about when it comes to Warhammer the Old World has been the fact that the rules aren't changing every 5 minutes, meaning that we can learn the game. It's easier for new players to get into the game, and you're not dealing with something that's constantly changing and you're really struggling from month to month, week to week to keep track of what on earth is going on in the game. But has that time come where we really need to think about making some changes? What's prompted this? Well, it is the London Grand Tournament. It was held over the weekend of the 28th, 29th of September. And for those taking part for the Warhammer Old World event, you'll have noticed a rather stark statistic. The top 4 players in the event were all taking Bretonnians. In fact, of the top 7 to take part in the event, 5 of those people were using Bretonnians, with vampire counts and beastmen making up the numbers. This really does seem to suggest that the Bretonnians are out and out just simply better than the other factions available. So I had a look at the lists being used by the top 4 players at the London GT, and I have to admit I was somewhat surprised by what I saw. Why is that? Well, I was kind of expecting to see all 4 of the lists to be pretty much identical, and while there is a lot of common ground between them, that's actually not the case to the extent I thought it would be. Let's have a quick run through, and let us start with the list of tournament winner, YouTube of some note, Dr. Luke Blacksill. I won't go into the full details of his list, however, he had a Pegasus Duke, a level 4, I think using battle magic. There was the Green Knight, and a BSB on a Pegasus, rounding out his character choices. Core was consisting of 12 bowmen, 2 units of 5 Knights of the Realm, and a unit of 6 Knights of the Realm. There were 2 units of 3 Pegasus Knights, 5 Yeomen, and 5 Squires. So the list does seem to be leaning quite heavily into Pegasus Knights, and I've talked about them previously. I think they're really strong, really manoeuvrable, hard-hitting, very difficult to deal with, particularly when they're backed up by characters. And Bretonnia does have some really good characters, can get some really good builds, and on the Pegasus, lots of manoeuvrability as well. You can really get them into the places you want them on the field. So, does the player in second have a very similar list? Well, actually, the player who came second was using the Bretonnian Exiles faction rather than the Grand Army list. The general was a Baron on a Pegasus, supported by a Paladin on a Pegasus and the Green Knight. So far so similar, albeit without the level 4. Core was made up of 8 Knights of the Realm, 9 Knights of the Realm, and 10 Bretonnian bowmen. The special slot had a unit of 5 Peg Knights and a unit of 4 Peg Knights, with 2 rare choices, both of which being a Bombard. So I'm definitely seeing a theme here, again leaning quite heavily into the Pegasus Knights. They seem to be a really good pick for people at the moment. A couple of cannon, now they aren't as good as Great Cannon. I do really like Great Cannon, I have to say. I think they offer a really nice equalizer when they work for the Empire, but interesting to see them doing well and being picked up for a successful Bretonnian force too. Moving on to the player who came third, and again we're seeing a normal Bretonnian army. The general is once again a Duke on Pegasus, supported by a Baron on a Pegasus and a level 4. Core consists of 2 units of 20 men-at-arms with all of the gubbins and a unit of 20 foot knights. They're backed by 2 units of 5 Pegasus Knights and 5 Yeomen. Now this is a very, very different list. Yes, it's leaning very hard into the Pegasus Knights, but the core picks are very different. So you've got heavy infantry, you've got tar pits, effectively, presumably grinding up the middle, blocking people out, and then allowing real hammer and anvil sort of tactics here with the 5-man Peg Knight squads. I'm guessing each one with a separate character, coming in to wreck people's flanks. 5 yeomen, as well as, I'm guessing here we're looking at chaff baiting, things like that. Let's move on to list number 4, and another Exiles list. This consists of 2 Barons on a Pegasus, the Green Knight, and a level 3 Wizard, backed by a unit of 10 Knights of the Realm, 6 Knights of the Realm, and 10 Bowmen. There are again 2 Bombards and a unit of 6 Pegasus Knights. Pegasi, absolutely out of the gazoo across these 4 armies, along with 3 iterations of the Green Knight. So I don't think it really takes a genius to point out the common ground between these armies, and it is largely, I think, in line with what people have been saying now for a while, which is the Bretonnians having access to these fast, hard-hitting peg units. They're just perhaps that little bit too strong. So let's take this back to our original question. Do we need a balanced datasheet? And I think, looking at the information we've just spoken about, the answer to that is yes. The Bretonnians, they just look like they need toning down. Yes, they're going to be in the hands of very good players if you're winning an event like the London GT, but they need to be toned down. However, and this is an important however, I think this is where we start to run into one of the major problems with the way Games Workshop have gone about releasing factions. And that is the difference between the core factions and the legacy factions. Games Workshop have made it very clear that they're not going to give any rule support, new models, etc. for the legacy factions. And we do see one of those in the top 7 here. We're seeing Vampire Counts. And we know that they've got a very, very strong list available to them in the form of a Scream list. Now, some people can deal with that. Some factions really struggle. And as an Empire player, traditionally, I really struggle with that. Now, that's just part and parcel of playing the game. And I'm absolutely fine with that. But we know that if Games Workshop were to do a balanced data sheet and were to try and rein in some of the more powerful units, more powerful builds to create a bit more balance, they're only going to focus on the core factions. Now, when legacy lists were first released, I think the idea people had was, yeah, they might be fairly strong to start with, but as they start to get worked out and other things get tweaked, they're going to start to get left behind. And they will become weaker and weaker as power creep kicks in and stuff like that. I think we do find ourselves, however, in the position as well where if there is a particularly powerful way of using one of those legacy lists, and to be honest, the Scream list is the only way I've seen really identified so far, it's that force will remain strong, and as other lists are weakened around them, they will start to rise to the top, somewhat undermining Games Workshop's separation. And although you can't take legacy lists to an official Games Workshop event, etc., they are being pretty widely used, and the vast majority of tournament organisers are going to allow them on the field. Given that Warhammer the Old World still does seem to be doing pretty well, I'd love to see Games Workshop just acknowledge the fact that actually the legacy lists need to be brought into the fold in a little bit more of a meaningful way and included in some rules updates. I think we do need some tweaks now. We are 9 months into the game, coming into October. but it can't just be the core factions. It has to be wider than that, and it has to be something meaningful to keep the game fun, to keep the game interesting. So let me know, what do you think down in the comments below? Have we reached the point where Warhammer the Old World really does need a bit of balancing? Yes, not all of the factions are out, and we know not all the factions are going to be out until at least 2025, with the Empire coming out in the new year. Or, of course, do you think the game's absolutely fine the way it is? The way Warhammer always used to be, when you got your book and that was it until your next book came out many, many years later. All that remains for me to say is thank you very much for stopping by. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, do consider dropping a like. Subscribing to the channel if you've not already done so is a massive help for a small channel such as this one. Thank you once again for listening. I am Return to the Old World. Have a great day.